evening, dear fellow alumni. Welcome to the 47th edition of the AIM AI FAME webinar. Today's topic, value creation opportunities as electricity accelerates towards carbon neutrality. As climate change is affecting entire humanity adversely, this topic becomes very relevant. And to talk on the same, we have top industry alumni experts, Mr. Pranab Sarmah, MBM 97, and Mr. Manish Pant, MBM 98. I have personally seen them from close quarters, as Pranab was one batch senior and Manish was my batchmate. Both have achieved great glory and laurels in their respective careers and have made our alma mater and the collective alumni proud. Without further ado, I hand over the floor to the both of them.
Thank you, Nikhil. We would just like to, before we start, just make sure we get some props that we intend to use for today's discussion on the screen, and I hope you can see it. Can you see it, Nikhil?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, thanks for introductions and for the kind words and the nice words. It's a real honor to be here with the rest of the alumni. I think it's an opportunity for us to expand our own alumni and social network, because we probably don't know all of you who are here. Nikhil, in his leadership, has been driving with the team a great work over the last 2 years, and you are indeed the driving force to keep us together and make sure that we do a little bit back for the school. So I'm here today with Pranab. Maybe you want to tell a little bit about yourself, how your journey has been before we jump into this topic and your association with it.
Okay, sure. Thanks, Manish, and thanks, Nikhil, for arranging all this stuff. Yeah, it has been very interesting journey since I left AIM about 23 years back. You are after probably 22 years back, right?
That's right.
So I think a lot of things happened when we left AIM. Means that time a lot of people wanted to move to a banking job or what is consulting job or big corporate job. Well, I also joined similar way, got an opportunity to join Japanese investment bank Daiwa. And I was with that company for quite some time. But as and when I moved over a period of years, I got introduced into the renewable energy sector, mainly solar, when I was in Daiwa. Then I really decided at some point, I think the time will come and we have to really jump into this particular industry. And after working in Daiwa for about 13 years or investment banking for about 15 years, I joined corporate to start solar energy in 2015. And since then, I think journey has been pretty interesting. And currently the platform which I'm running on the renewable energy business, this is one of the upcoming leading regional solar energy platform in Asia today.
Well, congratulations, and great to be here with you. On my side, I've been, since I left AIM, I've been with Schneider Electric, so I've been a one company man for so many years. And
good job.
Thank you. And I've been doing several roles, and Schneider has been leading in the area of, has been transforming itself rather into the area of sustainability and energy management solutions. And therefore, here to talk about that with you. Both of us are currently in Hong Kong, based here, and therefore taking that advantage, we are here together in this room. So as we kick off the topic, maybe just to set the context a little bit, we all know that sustainability is something which is what we have to give to the future generations, and in order to make sure that there's life still there in the next century. And in order to make sure that we are making this world sustainable, it's very important to bring down the carbon content that we have and link to carbon dioxide, which is the largest contributor of that carbon content in the world. And we have all heard about the different temperature rise that happens as a consequence of the increase of those gases. And in order to make sure that we have a sustainable world, I mean, there are different theories, but 1.5 degree pathway now is the most, I would say, consensus is building toward the 1.5 degree pathway. That means the temperature rise at the end of the century should be no more than 1.5 degrees when we entered the century. And that's what we have to be working towards. And if we don't do anything with what is happening in terms of development and the habits that we have, you can see here that we will go to a 3.1 to 3.7 degrees, which is what you see in the orange range. Clearly something which is unacceptable, and we are already seeing that. In fact, just now we read about what has happened in Uttarakhand with the glacier going away. I mean, it's all happening around us. We see these weather phenomena, which are all a result of climate change and clearly impacting us. COVID also being one of them, because it's a man-made. I mean, it is something which is also linked to what's happening on the climate. So clearly, we all have to be working towards it, and therefore, in order to achieve this 1.5 degree pathway, what is said is that the curve needs to start coming down, and by 2050, we need to achieve carbon neutrality in the world if we want to achieve this 1.5 degree pathway, and that's something that we have to be working towards. In fact, there is a new theory which is coming in that thinking about 2050 may be already too late. We need to act by 2030 and really see what we are able to do that. So what you see on the right side of the screen is a lot of governments acting on it. You have the COP25 and you have the COP26 coming in this year, and we have European Union, which is in some respects leading the way for limiting the temperature rise and committing to the carbon increase, which is the carbon dioxide reduction rather. Same for California. US does not represent full US, but it's more for California that is actually committed to net zero. And China, of course, coming in a little bit later in 2060, but clearly on the path. And I would not be surprised if that changes in a few years going forward. So that is what we will have to do. Now, one of the things that really contributes towards the reduction of the carbon dioxide is electricity. And as the energy consumption moves more and more towards electricity, which is the cleanest form of energy and the most efficient form of energy, it is going to make a much more greener environment. So the electricity consumption in the next 20 years is probably supposed to double, which is in line with what is required to happen to meet the 1.5 degree pathways. And therefore, how we are able to manage electricity, what we are able to move towards more, I would say, renewable form of energy in the mix is what is going to drive us into a much more sustainable future for us. So in the discussion, we can look at it from a supply point of view, which is what is happening on the generation and the supply of energy or electricity, and then we can look at what is happening in terms of the consumption, which is on the demand side. And this is how we'll structure the discussion. Of course, no better person to talk about it, of course, all over is Pranab together with me. But as we move to talking more about supply side, I will pass to you, Pranab, to take it from here.
Thanks, Manish. I think that's a great introductions on what is the backdrop or background of this whole discussion. Let's go to quickly on a bit on supply side. I think we have prepared one slide on that. Yes, thank you. Basically, like when you talk about the big topic today we have on value creations on all these things going to the carbon neutrality. When you talk about the value creations, I think the first value creation we have to talk about the survival of the human community or human this thing in current form. If we are not going to do something now or do not take actions today, probably the human community or human will survive end of the century, but in a very different form. We may not be able to roam around the street with the 7 billion populations without a mask or something. Probably few million people will survive in a bunker or somewhere. So we do not want to happen that thing to go to take place. So what the idea here is, even if you do not have an artificial intelligence smartphone, the humankind will survive. But without this going to the sustainability, humankind is not going to survive. I think this is everybody has understood, and that is the reason a lot of monies are flowing to the industry now, and people has to get it done. And this is the first value creation we have to really keep in mind. But having said that, since the money is flowing to the industry now, people has realized, people have seen the all this bad effect or catastrophic effect we are getting from the climate change. A lot of opportunity has been created, new business segment, new job opportunities, and probably I'll talk more on the supply side, as you have mentioned about that. In supply side of electricity, among the renewables, I think solar has become one of the dominant player. If I see today, like total investment on the renewable energy industry annually on the capex side is about $400 billion for roughly. Out of that, half has come from solar side. So that is the run rate we are getting on the solar side. And if you see here, like on this supply, I guess energy efficiency one part, I think we'll be talking more on the dollar terms we have already talked about, and the value creations on the as per the employment opportunity. I think on the renewable energy, like about 12 million people are already in the job. It's a relatively new industry. Out of this 12 million, I think I'd like to highlight one more very critical point is nearly 1/3, 32% of this job is the women. I think empowering women is also a very important part. And I'm very pleased to say is like women are becoming a big part of these global job creations on the renewable energy industry. And out of that, probably 1/3 currently is of 12 million or 4 million is on the solar. I think that is also a big value creation is happening on the renewable energy. And more importantly, if you see Manish or the team, like from this 12 million job, it will probably reach over 30 million in next 10 years. A lot of value creation job with relatively a better pay than average job available in the world has been coming from the renewable energy. And in this area, if you see, like we have also highlighted, like from where the job opportunities are coming up, China has been leading with about 4 million people involved in renewable energy, whereas India is not far behind. I think India is one of the top 4 or 5 countries globally to have number of people involved in the renewable energy business. I'll probably leave out here on this few point. It's probably time to go more on the,
Sure.
the supply side, demand side, or anything you want to discuss?
Yeah, I think it's very well said. So clearly, the world is moving towards, just as we see in India, a large part of the generation capacity is going to come from solar, right? Correct. So, which is already happening, and you are at the center of it. For those of us here, Pranab has established a company and is actually doing several projects in India and in rest of Asia in terms of establishing solar. So I think before we get to that, maybe you want to tell about some of the projects that you're doing and how many megawatts of capacity that your company is building.
Okay, within my company, I'll probably go, because this company has 2 parts, solar and wind. I'm looking after mostly solar business, which is basically I co-founded that particular business. Currently, we have practically over 1 gigawatt of the projects under development. Nearly 500 megawatt is under construction. Out of that, practically about 450 megawatt is under construction in India today.
That's great. That's great. I think I'm sure that the rest of the alumni is very curious that how did you move from banking to being an entrepreneur, and that too in the renewable sector? If you want to talk about that.
I think, as I explained earlier, I think this is the place where we have to be there because it's a survival of the humanity or human race. Mm-hmm. So that has really pushed me to do something. But timing is a big part. Like when you do it, practically people used to know this one 20 years back, 30 years back, but that time there is not a economic vehicle or something we can really push together unless it's really funded by somebody as a subsidy funded project. It was there. But now what happened in 2010 onwards, this particular business has really become economically viable without enough government subsidy. And business started growing. And as you know, when we came up from the AIM, we are supposed to be born like an entrepreneur. I think a lot of AIM grads are entrepreneur today, and that is there in our blood. Probably we have learned that from our 2 years of rigorous cycles at AIM, and that was there in my blood as well. And I tried to really move into this industry sometime in 2015. I think I got an opportunity. Then, yeah, since then, I think the journey has been pretty good in this particular business over the last 5 years.
Great, and I think that the single biggest, I would say, the driver for value creation is really also on the generation side, which is what you are showing and you're leading by yourself. Maybe we can move ahead and get back into the discussion a bit later. Moving forward on the demand side, what we see is that first is that as the electricity is going to the consumption of electricity is going to increase in a big way. It's going to double. We see it happening all around us. You look at electric vehicles which are coming in. One electric vehicle that comes in a home increases the electricity consumption by almost 40%. Okay, so in countries where we have 2 electric vehicles or even 3 electric vehicles coming in the next 10 to 15 years, you can see the amount of the impact it's going to have in the energy consumption in your home. Same for heating, as well as for cooling. It is largely through electricity. But if you look at heating and in markets in colder environments, let's take the case of Europe. You have still today a lot of gas heating which happens, which is going to change to electric heating, and this is going to be a big driver in terms of going towards the carbon dioxide limit and the net carbon neutrality. UK has announced that they want to remove all gas heating, and heating in homes has to move to electric heating by 2030. So this is something which is going to happen more and more, and that is what will drive. Now, the challenge that we have is, while we would have renewables also coming on the side of consumption, closer to consumption. So we talked about the generation, but then there is micro generation or decentralized generation that would happen closer to the demands, and especially in homes or also in buildings. So microgrids and including solar microgrids are going to come up to large buildings as well as to certain communities, and that's what is going to increase the mix of renewable energy that is coming into homes. Then the other part of efficiency drive is, once your energy consumption is increasing, how do you bring the level of energy efficiency into it? Okay, so we have today existing buildings which are actually consuming, which are highly inefficient in terms of the amount of energy consumption that happens there. If you take the case of UK, there are almost about 8.5 million buildings which are 60 years old, and about 90% of them need to be retrofitted. And that's first, this is a huge business opportunity. I mean, retrofitting a building in terms of changing the energy consumption pattern it's a big job, and the pace of renovation is extremely slow. So in the past few years, the rate of renovation is 0.2%. So what it roughly means is it's about 350 years before all those buildings are retrofitted. So of course, we can't be waiting for that time. It has to happen more fast. There's a lot of government money coming in. We heard about the Green Deal, which is coming in order to facilitate the change of buildings and energy efficiency into buildings. What we know through various solutions, and I will take the opportunity to talk about Schneider Electric here as well, that we are able to bring between up to 30% and sometimes even up to 50%. I mean, if your base case is really very old, I mean, you can actually save up to 50%. So between 30 and 50% in energy savings is what we are able to bring. And today those technologies are available across to make that happen. So that is something which is clearly a big opportunity, and we need a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of companies which need to get into this in order to deliver those solutions and also create some of those solutions working through different business models. So efficiency, really some of the big driver in terms of savings that potentially could happen to drive the energy and to drive the, I would say, the carbon lower. The other is around resiliency. So together with sustainability, what we see today is that there is a need for the backup power. Let's say, you want continuity of power, you have storms coming in. It's not just a phenomena that we used to see in emerging markets in Philippines and in India, elsewhere, but today this is happening everywhere in the world. I mean, you read about northeastern US getting out of power because of a snowstorm. So storage is something which is also going to gain a lot of importance. So I would say renewables linked to solar, I think together are going to be the single biggest driver in terms of bringing down the greenhouse gases and the carbon consumption that happens going forward. The other part that we also see is that if you take much closer from a customer perspective is that the cost of power is also going up. So while you have increase in power demand and increase in consumption of power and the cost of power going up, you need to be able to optimize your power. And this is where digital comes in, and this is where the various form of automations and the proliferation of automation that would happen on the demand side, whether it's around buildings, whether it's around homes, and this is going to help consumers or building owners or people who are occupying or occupants of business of buildings bring down their energy consumption in a very big way. So those are some of the I would say values that would drive more and more sustainability in the world. So let's I think the key message that I'd like to say is that as the demand increases, the opportunities for energy efficiency together with distributed generation, renewable generation, much closer to the demand is what is going to happen. And this is going to be enabled by digital, by digitization, which is going to make that possible. And this is where there will be needs for more investments. I mean, there are investments that are going to come in from private enterprises. There is already a huge $1 trillion worth of the EU Green Deal, and we hear about that in different countries that are going to come, especially in a post-COVID situation. And as a result, it is going to call for new technologies, a lot more of software, a lot more of automation, as well as the classical installation of various, I would say, energy efficiency mechanisms, whether they are on the electrical side, and I would say a lot more on the electrical side because that's where the generation is happening, but also in terms of insulation, in terms of the kind of materials that are used to drive that efficiency in the buildings. So I would say that this is something that we should look forward to, and this is where, if you're looking for the next place of a career. I think it's a place which is going to be, I mean, on top of what you just mentioned, Pranab, which is the huge, I would say, job creation opportunities and new skills which are required on the generation side would also be required on the side of demand or in terms of consumption of energy, which is going to be more and more electric.
That's a pretty good point. But the way I see, like when you are going for the homes and all, that it will be more decentralized, more distributed. So whatever the job creations we have talked on the generation side, pretty much centralized job, manufacturing and all. But when you go for the decentralized or distributed generation, I think the last mile will be very important. Do you have any foresee, like you said, only 0.2% is the replacement rate in a year sort of thing? Like, how do you see like job creation on the last mile of this renewable energy deployment?
That's a very good question. I think what we are seeing is, I will take the case of solar installers. Okay, solar installation is a new trade which has started, I would say, in the last 10 years. And here I'm talking about installation at homes. I'll take that for example. Before you used to have electricians, now you have solar installers. So in certain countries which are highly regulated, take the case of US, the license for an electrician and the license for a solar installer is very different. And the penetration of solar today is at 3% for homes. And this penetration is going to increase to 30% in the next 20 years. I mean, this is going to happen. So what it means is that you need, as a minimum, 10 times increase in the number of solar installers who are there, and this would happen across the geography because homes are everywhere, buildings are everywhere, and what it essentially means is you actually need much more than just a simple mathematical multiple. So this is where it is going to lead to, and what we have to be doing is, I think first is it's as I said, that it is driven by what happens in terms of regulation, but at the same time it is also a big responsibility of corporations like ours to see how we are able to bring those skill levels, those trainings, those tools in order to see how we are able to train the people in the last mile of installation. At the same time, when you look at technologies that are going to go into it, those are also going to become, I would say, would be asking for a lot of investment, and investment both in terms of money as well as in terms of resources and people. That has to happen. The whole, I would say, consumption is very local, right? So, and the needs for consumption for a homeowner in India, and even within India, whether you are in a Delhi or a Mumbai, is different from whether you are in the Middle East or you are in Europe or you are in US. So, it's very, very local. So the ability to bring those solutions from, some of those technologies which would be on a global level to translating them into a local level is something that would happen. I would say a large part of that would happen through several companies that would need to be created in order to do that in the future. So that's a big opportunity. Of course, there would be large players like ours, which would be trying to do that, which will be doing that or are already doing that. But then it's not enough. We really need to scale up here, and therefore there's a huge, I would say that this change is something the sooner we are able to recognize it, I think it is going to move. And what we are seeing today in the markets where the sustainability companies are getting valued. I mean, if you look at what has happened to just like it has happened to the technology side, it has happened to the sustainability side. I can give examples of two big players who are on the residential inverters. So there is a company called Enphase and another company called SolarEdge. and all of them have increased their valuation by minimum. I would say they've increased their valuation and are trading up to almost 10 times their top line in the last I would say 4 to 5 months. So that's what it. I mean, that's a great example of what is actually happening in terms of value creation, right? Because investors are very bullish about it, because this is where the world is going, and therefore we clearly need much more to happen in this area, and that's the exciting part. And I think today for us, we are, I would say, somewhere we are also fortunate that we are in an industry which is really looking to the future and changing the world.
Right. Even you are there in a big corporations for so long, and what I understand is Schneider, I think they have really pushed hard on sustainability part, and I think end of last year or this year they have got ranked #1 on the sustainability ranking by what is called Corporate Knights, right? Corporate Knights, yeah. So that's what I. Can you just explain a bit, like a big corporate with so much of people, and you are being one of the leaders in this corporate, how you could manage to do these things over a period of such a short time, and also reach a particular milestone, like being a #1 in the sustainability ranking in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. I think first is that it starts at the top. So clearly the strategy of the company was to bring towards the future, and this is something that our CEO, Mr. Jean-Pascal Tricoire, started that several years ago. We have been talking about it. Our company purpose is to empower all to make the most of the energy and resources, bridging progress and sustainability. So that was at the core. So what do you do is that each of us know that we are doing what brings sustainability in the world. So and the way this was possible, we were a classical energy management company. Of course, we were in the right place because the world was turning electric. And then we saw that we need to be really building our skills and competencies as our customer needed those solutions. So we did that inorganically. We did that organically. We acquired companies which bought us sustainability services. We did that in the US. We did that all over the world. And we had been able to integrate and lay on top what we do organically within the company and bring those solutions to our customers. Of course, the other big piece is about digitization. I think that sustainability and digitization go together. We call ourselves as our digital partners for sustainability and efficiency for our customers. So that's what we had started to build. So all the solutions which are tied around that, we started to build several years ago, and now we have already been delivering those solutions across to companies, and we are managing the resources and energy for large corporations and small corporations as well. And more importantly, we do it ourselves. So as a company, we are committed to a net carbon neutrality by 2025 in what is within the company. Yes, and then of course aided together with certain mitigative actions outside of the company. But then by 2030, we want to make sure that we are on full scope 2 and 3. We are fully carbon neutral. So that's something. It's a very ambitious commitment that has been made. And so we eat our own food. We want to set that standard for ourselves, just as we are able to give to our customers.
That's a pretty good explanation.
Good. So I think with this we come to the end of time. Maybe just to summarize what we clearly see. I mean, one is that we really have to be going on the pathway of the 1.5 degree, which is what is required. And the way it would happen is if we are able to ensure that by 2050 we are carbon neutral in the world. And here with the topics that we have been talking about, it's a very vast topic, and I think I'm sure all of us have views on that, and it's very difficult to address that in 1 hour. But what we, as we say that renewables as part of the electricity mix is what is going to be a big driver. Pranab is doing that for for himself as much as for the rest of the world, contributing towards it. So that's a place where a lot of investment will come, as much as the investment would come on the demand side, where there are needs for energy efficiency, the mix of renewables, and also power reliability, which are going to be the biggest drivers for the future, and also lead us into sustainability. Yeah. Maybe we can stop here and start to look at what is on the chat and questions that have been raised, or if somebody wants to add to it and participate, we are all here to learn from each other.
There is a question from Mr. Anwar Chowdhury. Mr. Anwar Chowdhury is the alumni head of Bangladesh Alumni Association. So in the chat box, he has a question. We'll just have a look at it.
Okay. I'm not sure. Okay, so
if you want me to read the question, I can.
Oh, it's okay, I think, right?
And if anybody wants to ask a question, they can raise their hand. I can unmute you all.
Okay, so this is from Mr. Anwar in Bangladesh about the increasing the awareness of the farmers who are not interested to put, say, solar farm. I guess I do not see a reason why they will not be interested, as long as there is a economic incentives to be made to the those people, whoever the final installer on that. Obviously, if there is something, the alternative they are getting, which is cheaper than solar in Bangladesh for this thing, then it will be a bit challenged. Then government has to come up with some sort of a promotional plan, like practically giving some subsidies on installing that solar, what is called modules or solar pumps. That way it has to go, or maybe the financing subsidy. I'm sure, like I have not done too much of detailed study on that, like how this can be, how much subsidy it may be necessary in Bangladesh. But this is where to look at to reduce the cost of funding one side and cost of capital, so that it becomes economically viable for the farmers in Bangladesh to use as a substitutions. And these are the only two ways: capital subsidy or interest cost decline.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. So, the other way to look at it is, and I'm not fully aware of, the cost situation, the cost of power in Bangladesh, but, that has been the biggest driver. As cost goes up, this comes down. In order to facilitate, as you said, probably we could be looking at some business models which are able to bring them to the farmers at an amortized cost over a longer period, when you have a payback. And it's not just in Bangladesh. I think it is something that which probably would be in many parts of the world.
Yeah, means India, it's already there. Yeah. Like pump storage or pump solars are pretty popular in India already.
Okay, sir.
So Rao, there's a question from you, and thank you for that, about the skills that you required. We can talk about it, maybe.
Yeah, I think thanks, Professor Rao. Basically, skills required are obviously different, in a little bit of different in Manish's segment versus our segment. I think when you talk about the skills on our side, I think there are pretty much various in the cycle. Like there are first part of the cycle of the projects for solar projects or any renewable energy projects is the development. Then second part is mostly on the construction engineering, that part. And then within that, obviously the financing part also come in. So that is another industry which is supporting that one. And once the projects are completed, then you need operation and maintenance. I think that makes the whole cycle of the renewable energy. I think within that, this thing, every part has a different challenges, but development is relatively a more challenging thing. It's not necessarily only to bid or something, get a price done, but in many countries, new countries, you have to really go and explain to the government what is the policy changes are necessary in order to make inroad for the renewable energy in those particular countries. So I'll always put a little bit of being a developer centric in my mind. The value creations on the development side on the whole cycle is the highest at this point, because that is where the business starts. Then as when we go, that value creation is still there on the engineering side. Obviously, the value creation will be slightly lower because a lot of things are compared to development side has to come from a standard product available with us at this market in order to bring the cost down. And last one is on the O&M side. That is one part. And within this value creations on this thing on the financing side, there are a lot of people, they have to learn new way of financing, project financing on or equity financing of the renewable energy projects. There are different situations in different countries, like insurance, this, that on renewable energy. I think there are a lot of huge part of the value creations are coming, or job creations are coming on different part. And even the insurance advisor for the renewable energy industry, you have to learn every details about the risk involved in that particular project. And there are special courses of that so that they can get into that.
Yeah, sure. And I can give an example of since you mentioned about AI, I could talk about the homes. So homes, we today talk about that homes need to get smart, but they also need to get smart and sustainable. So take, for example, the consumption that you have in your home. First is that if you would like to reduce your consumption, it starts with monitoring. You need to know where you are consuming. So that's the first step. Then after that, once you know where you're consuming, take, for example, you maintain the temperature at a particular rate, let's say 22 or 23 degrees in your home. If you're able to if you're in a cold country, if you're able to reduce the temperature by 1 degree, it could tell you how much savings it's able to bring to you. And similarly, if you're in a warm country, if you're able to increase the temperature by a degree, it is able to tell you how much you are able to save on your air conditioning. So, and then examples like this could be overlaid with AI, which is able to automatically tell you that what is going to be your consumption during a month, and what are those actions based on your previous experiences and behaviors that you need to change that would be able to help you achieve your goal, for example. So these, so digitization, as I said, is something which is very core to what we do in sustainability and what we do in terms of efficiency that comes into the homes. And this is where the role of data and therefore everything linked to data, whether it's analytics, whether it's AI, as different layers are going to be what is required. Some of it sounds a little bit futuristic, but just to say that the cost of solar in a home, if you build a solar, it is for a 3 kilowatt, it would go somewhere in the region of between $5,000 and between $3,000 and $5,000, depending on the country you are and the type of choices that you make. But if you include storage, it can go up to $10,000. So you would like to maximize that, and if a software is able to tell you, your application is able to tell you whether you use solar for a particular application, or you use grid power for a particular application, or you use storage for a particular application, and if it is able to do it automatically without your intervention, I think this is going to be the most efficient form of, I would say, the most optimized and most efficient form of energy consumption that could happen. So this is where kind of the world is going. And then what the utilities are doing is that they could also give you incentive for saying that, Pranab, if you bring down your energy consumption at a particular time of the day by a certain number of kilowatts, we are going to reward you, right? So this whole area of energy is becoming very much I mean, first, it's very interesting from a business perspective, because you as a homeowner can actually make money from the utility to save. But in order to do that, you require a lot of software which is intelligently able to integrate all those different homes in the world or in that community, and be able to aggregate it or disaggregate it to the utility. And all this is going to happen through software. So digitization is really at the core of what is going to happen in terms of efficiency, and therefore the need for skills linked to that, on top of what is required for hardware, whether it's about inverters or solar panels or it is about wiring, that all of that is required. And that's what makes it so much interesting and so much future oriented. Let's put it like that.
This is like on the digitization. Obviously, this is a another area of the digitization also we need to look at is even issuing funding side of that thing. There are a lot of cryptocurrencies are also getting developed for renewable energy, which can be traded. Say suppose the way Manish said, like there are a certain amount of value creations is happen, and that value creation is happen on saving energy and this thing, whether that can be done on the cryptocurrency basis and can be traded all over the world, and somebody wants to invest on that, that can be also, those type of discussions are also going on now. And I think some of the platforms are already created on that side as well. It's more on the funding side.
So I hope we answered that. And some of those, there was a question around the digitization solution. So I hope that gave an example of what is potentially possible around digitization, as I mentioned, for homes. I would like to take the question from Mohan, which mentions about the retrofit of existing apartments. I think it's a great point that you make. So today, you have the single family homes which are independent, and then you have the apartments, which is the vertical housing. So for single family homes, it's very clear you're able to bring your own panel, you're able to get your storage, you're able to get things going. I think it's much more easier. When you are in a vertical apartment, I think it's yes, you're right. I think that there it is not so straightforward, because you need to probably come as a community in order to bring the decentralized generation, either create a microgrid, which used to be, let's say, generators in some parts of India that we have seen, and that need to move towards a solar microgrid. That could happen. Now, yes, does it happen on the roof, or does it happen in another location, and you are you don't actually do it, but you just trade electricity, you just trade renewable energy, which is also possible today. You don't need to put your own generation, you could buy that. And yes, all those enablements are only possible if there is a regulation which allows you to do that. So today, this is, in the past, there were feed-in tariffs, and I think this is changing as we speak. The feed-in tariffs or supplying power back to the grid is actually on a decline, and more utilities are starting to say that it's very difficult for them to manage, and they're realizing that if, like in Australia, if people move to renewables, they are actually out of business. So all that infrastructure spend that they have done is actually going to be completely useless. So there's a lot of disruption that is happening here. Now it is so I mean there are different elements to it. Whether it is single family home, I can talk about France, where the roof is very, very critical, and just as anywhere else. But in France, there have been incidents where roof has actually come down in the past, and therefore the roof insurance decides who is able to get on your roof and work on it. So the business for solar is actually done by the roofing companies more than specialist solar installers, because they have the right level of insurance, etc., which they're able to bring to the homeowner. So I think one of the things that probably is going to happen is in a post-COVID situation where the governments are going to pump in trillions of dollars to revive the economy. Sustainability is really the key agenda where money will flow, and I think those who can influence the flow of that funds should really see how it is able to drive and going in the right direction is what I can potentially say, where all of us here should be trying to do, to make sure that regulation that is going to be built is in a way that drives more sustainability and is able to drive, encourage adoption of renewables or sustainable, I would say sustainable behaviors, whether I'm in a home or whether I'm in a building or whether I'm in a factory.
Okay, just adding to what Manish has said about the response from Mohan is, I think the second question is like cracking and all, that having a proper insurance practice in that particular country is very important. Say many developed countries do have a proper insurances for any this type of cracking happens and all. I'm sure like government of India is also working on to get certain insurance policies changed around this area. And I think that is one of the points we need to look at. Then second part is also, if you have seen the recent budget in India, which just came out a few days back, reform of the what is called discoms are very much important. And they have, if I convert the number, they have allocated about 42 billion US dollar roughly to reform the discoms over next 5 years in India. And that is practically leading a lot of impetus for the distribution generation. Basically, the consumer may have a choice to buy electricity from 2 sources or 3 sources sitting at the same area, which is not there currently in India. I think those are the few things will probably come up about the distribution energy part in India over the next few years.
True. There's a question from Ramesh around the cost structures which are prohibiting. So I think today we talked a bit about that in terms of what is happening, but I think if you what is happening is there is a deflation in terms of the what they call is the LCOE, or the levelized cost of energy, which is bringing the cost of solar or renewables, and I think solar more than even wind is happening, and therefore that is reducing the payback period. The cost of power, which is going up. If you look at the payback today for solar in homes, purely without storage, it has come down to 3 years. So now, of course, I think what is driving the adoption is not so much on the cost side only, but also in terms of our classical capex to opex model. So when you have to upfront invest that $5,000 or $3,000 for a 3 kilowatt, I mean that's the biggest impediment, and therefore things like financing and the ease of financing, and I would say the comfort level in terms of taking financing, to taking credit for this, those are the things that need to happen in order to drive, I would say, more of this, more of adoption of renewables. But having said that, the other factor, which is this move towards the net carbon zero, which is really becoming a very big movement, and everybody starts to realize, especially after COVID, that it's an interconnected world. So if it's not that you only need to reduce carbon in Europe and the world will be okay, I think that myth is gone. This needs to happen everywhere in the world, and once this is happening, and the other economic incentives around carbon pricing, which probably, I mean, I would say that it's going to come in even more going forward, will make sure that the cost neutrality happens till such time that I would say the regular cost of that product goes down. Take, for example, electric vehicles is a good example of that. I mean, electric vehicles today, the cost of storage is what is making them more expensive than the gas engines. But we know that if in 10 years time, all the cars are going to be electric, would we want, if you're going in to buy a car now, would we really buy a non-electric car? It's some of those questions which will change the behavior, I think, going forward. And this is going to happen for electricity as well. So there's a question around from Sandeep around the solar plants replacing small CCPP number of projects. So do you want to comment on that?
I can't recall exact numbers out here, but.
So I think while you look at that, Sandeep, my view is that what is going to happen is, in the end, what matters is the amount of carbon that is going to go in the end, right? So for sure, you could be making a coal generation plant, and if you are able to do CCS or carbon capture and are able to take it down, probably it is something which will be okay. So whether it is going to be only renewable, I think it is going to be a mix of different technologies. In the end, we have to look at the mix of generation through different technologies, but all those technologies have to be net zero. I think that is probably the end goal. And now, what technology at what cost is able to deliver? Today we know renewables is able to do that. I mean, of course, there's zero emission right in the beginning, so you don't have to invest in technologies. But if carbon capture becomes a viable technology, probably you could be having, still having some generation through fossil fuels, but you are investing. And the cost of oil is going to be so low that you could still generate and invest the rest in capturing and taking it down. So it's a great point, but it's probably a mix of different technologies that would happen.
Okay, thanks for adding that one. And Sandeep, basically, like what we need to look at here is the energy storage cost. Basically, why you are needing the coal along with renewable is basically cost of energy storage. And currently, still, if you use the coal, you will be using a carbon. You are not going to the carbon neutral. So where this is coming up, obviously, battery is one side, but one of the new area we have to really look at and focus on is in hydrogen. And a lot of hydrogens are, I think we have already highlighted one slide earlier, will be produced using renewable energy. This thing, basically, you have to go there, then you have to do electrolysis of water, then capture hydrogen and put the hydrogen as a sources of energy storage. I think that part, and already there are gas plants are there. Instead of using maybe LPG or another gas, you can just use the hydrogen over a period of time, which as a storage. I think that is the way we have to look at going forward.
So Anwar, yes, sure, the cost of capital machineries, or let's say the hardware or the total solution, will go down. I think the larger the adoption, so it's a little bit of a vicious cycle. The higher the adoption, the lower the cost. I think the economies of scale work there. There's more investment going into technologies, and therefore the cost goes down. And I'm sure that would happen, which is what we see, whether it's solar panel or whether it is storage. For any of the new technologies. Okay. Thank you for that. Question from Adi, and if it is our Adi in Malaysia, so great to hear from you. This is I would say that things like biogas still probably generate carbon. So I don't know if that is I don't think that's a solution for the future, even though that's not really renewable. I mean, that is another fuel which is probably accessible to you at a lower cost. That's all.
No, actually, biogas is renewable. Basically, what happened, like you are recycling whatever being produced by the cultivations or this thing. So this is renewable, but it may not be carbon neutral.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
So that is where this thing. So when biogas it comes under renewable energy mix, but it may not be too much carbon neutral. See, again, we have to see one more side out here. Like when you go for a much upper side of this whole cycle, when you do some sort of cultivations to feed even the this thing, what is called cattle and all, to generate even cow dung and go biogas, or maybe using even bamboos and all, you might be able to use the biogas directly. You have to use a lot of fertilizer, and some amount of the fertilizer you are still using basically carbons to produce them, either some sort of crude oils derivatives.
Manish, we have Jack New from China.
Yes.
He has put the question, but Jack, you can ask the question yourself. Because
we read it. Yeah. Okay. Hi, Jack.
Yeah. Hi. I also graduated from AM in 1998. I worked for Altis at that time, sponsored by Altis. After that, I joined Honeywell Building Solutions, similar to Schneider. We did a lot of EPC, energy performance contracting, energy saving for the buildings. Honeywell have a vision to try to compare each building efficiency of the energies by dashboard. But to set up a server in China and to connect with the different buildings, actually is some buildings not willing to share data, not willing to do the remote monitoring for the building. And also same situation when I work for Vistas, it's the supply side. The Vistas have a global data center, and cloud can show different wind farms, the productivities, and also energy generation. Which wind farm have the highest productivity. So in China, the regulation is for the energy side, the data cannot go out of the border. So we need to set up a server within China. So many state-owned enterprise, they have their own data center, but not willing to share with the multinational companies. So AI and remote monitoring actually is to play the key role, to compare each building with another building, and compare each wind farm with another wind farm. So do you think this is the challenge, and how to overcome this challenge in different countries?
So, Jack, you summarize it very well. I think first is that we have to follow the regulations of the land. So, which means, unfortunately, it's not just in China, but many other places that you need to have a local server in order to get the data. And then there's a strong regulation around data, the security of the data, and the GDPR regulations, which are coming in starting from Europe. I think we have to respect that. We have to follow that. I mean, that goes without saying. Now, operating within that space, we have one of the things that customers would realize is that the true power of digitization happens when you are working in open systems, right? And then you are able to maximize data sharing and leverage all the different benchmarks. So it would mean that and as cybersecurity, which is one of, I would say, one of the concerns, and very valid so, for a lot of corporations which are making them a bit insular, and as technologies develop and make cybersecurity that much, make you feel so safe, and I'm sure it is in Honeywell, it is in Vestas, just as in Schneider, we spend a lot on cybersecurity, and we want to assure our customers that we are really doing everything for ensuring that that cybersecurity is taken care of, not just for them but also for us. I mean, because it's I would say the weak point can be anywhere in the ecosystem, in the larger ecosystem. So it's a great question. I think time will say how this evolves. In the meantime, if you're a close customer and you would like to have the same services, it's probably going to cost you more. Is what I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Because I need to do something very specialized and focused for you and bring that information to you in the right form, versus if you are part of a larger ecosystem and you're able to access the benchmarks by yourself, what is available on the cloud, for example, of course, for a much lower cost than what it would be for a proprietary information. So that's the way I take it.
Thank you.
There's a question in the chat box now. Deepak Sindwani.
So yeah, I can. So I don't know about the budget. No, this isn't the budget, but I think that this is just made on the budget at this point, and we do not have too much of details currently. We have to follow it up. It's just whatever it has been already put together, that will probably go to the respective departments, respective ministries, how they want to allocate to which particular discoms and all those stuff. So I think it's a long way to go. Again, this is over a period of 5 years in this thing. So I think we have to look at, but I do not have any concrete answer today because it's just a few days old.
So I can probably not speak on the Indian context, but I can speak a little bit in the US context. Okay. So what has happened in the US, there has been a recent regulation which has been passed, where you could aggregate up to 100 kilowatts of power and sell it to the grids, sell it back to the grid. So that means you could get around with, let's say, 10 homes, 100 homes and 1 kilowatt each. If you're able to bring in, you could have aggregation of 100 kilowatts in multiples of 100 kilowatts, and you are able to trade into the net. So this is something that is happening. Now this is only possible if you have smart systems, if you have smart homes, where as a consumer you are able to respond to demand response in a very quick manner. So that's something which is happening now on the CNI scale. So whether it's commercial and industrial buildings, or installations, this is already possible today in a large part, where the utilities do ask you to respond to a particular need for higher or on the lower side, and you are incentivized for that. So it is. So the answer, if you think in the future, the answer is yes. It is a matter of time how this happens, how I would say the regulation comes in, as well as how technologies and especially automation technologies are proliferating in that respective segment is what I would say.
I think Manish and Pranav have answered every question very thoroughly. I would request everybody to switch on their screens, because here we have our batchmates from 97 and 98. And also we have two professors who taught us. We have Professor Purba Rao and Professor Nishi Mukherjee. Professor Rao has switched on her camera. I would request Professor Nishi to also switch on his camera. And I would request other batchmates also, Anish and Jack, I mean, all of y'all, so that we can just have a, now I'll stop the recording. Thank you, Manish, and thank you, Pranav. Officially, I'm stopping the recording now, but please stay on, because